Again, my name is Antron Watson. I'm the age-friendly director here with AARP Massachusetts. I want to thank you all for joining us for our Livable Wednesday series that really highlights the variety of ways volunteers, organizations, and municipalities across Massachusetts are paying an increased attention to the environmental, economic, and social factors that influence health and well-being of people as they age. If you have any questions throughout the presentation, please use the Q&A feature. Myself and my partner will be monitoring that throughout the event today. So please get your questions in there and we'll make sure they get answered. So as you may already know, AARP has been working to promote the health and well-being of older Americans for more than 60 years through information, advocacy, and resources. We all want to live in places where there are transportation options, housing options, housing is affordable, and works for the needs our needs as we age. There is accessibility to outdoors, and there are ways to stay connected with loved ones and neighbors. Ultimately, our vision is for a future in which communities, urban, suburban, and rural, are great places for all, especially people 50 plus. Today, I'm pleased to talk about the importance of social connections. Regardless of a person's age, loneliness is often a debilitating health condition as having a chronic illness or disease. Sadness and isolation can be combated by having opportunities to socialize and the availability of accessible, affordable, and fun social activities. I'm honored to be joined by some folks who are actively working to disrupt isolation in our communities and identify both simple and unique opportunities for social connection. Just as a reminder, again, Q&A is a great place to put your questions. If there's something great that you hear throughout, please use the chat feature. Tell us what you enjoy about what our panelists are saying today. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and introduce our panelists. We have Sandra Harris, who is with AARP Massachusetts, who is our AARP Massachusetts Volunteer State President, as well as a co-chair for the Task Force to End Loneliness and Build Community. In addition to Sandra, we're joined by Jared Bloomfield from Wish of a Lifetime. So I want to thank you both for being here today. In all honesty, I've said a lot in the first 3 minutes of this program. So I really want to turn it over to you all to really share more about what you're doing in communities, what organizations you're working with are doing in communities, and the ways that our listeners and participants today can really engage with what we're doing and really address the issue of isolation that we're facing in the state. So Sandra, how about we turn it over to you?
Thank you so much, Antron. It is my honor to be here sharing with you the work that's going on statewide in Massachusetts. Okay, good. And this is the things that we're doing in Massachusetts to build a stronger community by making connection. Next slide first. Next slide, please. The first thing I'd like to do is to share and to define the difference between loneliness and social isolation. Isolation denotes a social connection or interaction with a small size network and the frequency of engaging in that. There are very few connections or interactions. For some people, that's fine. Some people like solitude. And just because you are isolated does not mean that you are lonely, but isolation can lead to loneliness. However, when you look at loneliness, this is a subjective perception that you're not being seen, not being heard, not connected. And, you can be in a room full of people. How many of us have been in a room full of people and felt lonely, right? So again, there is a difference. And because you're isolated, does not mean that you're lonely, but loneliness is a real issue. Next slide, please. And loneliness affects 1 in 5 older adults or people older over 50. Next. Loneliness is a health risk. It is as bad for health as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. It's associated with things like high blood pressure, early onset dementia, greater risk of heart disease, greater risk for functional decline, and a greater risk for death. Next slide, please. So why do this work? We began this work in 2019, and prior to COVID, because we began to see how this epidemic was impacting our communities. And of course, it was all made worse by COVID. We knew at the time, and this was before COVID, that there were over 540,000 Massachusetts residents aged 50 plus living alone and therefore at risk of loneliness. And the most compelling things that we were hearing from communities and organizations, they were knocking on our doors asking for help. Next slide, please. So we then called together the people who were doing work in the space, spent some time talking with the ARP Foundation that was doing work in loneliness and social isolation. And we began a statewide coalition dedicated to ensuring that all residents of the Commonwealth feel connected to the community and enjoy a strong sense of social well-being. We essentially, we called people out of their silos and agreed to come together and for the common good to maximize our resources and ingenuity to make a difference. Next slide, please. And here we are now 35 plus organizations, including government organizations, nonprofits, academic institutions, advocacy groups, thought leaders, just volunteers who are interested in other people who are really interested in working with us. Next slide, please. The very first thing that we did was develop what we called guiding principles. What's going to drive our work? We wanted to make sure that we were community-based and grassrooted. We wanted to be in the community, wanted to understand how loneliness was being manifested in the communities and what communities were doing about it. We wanted to make sure that it was a statewide partnership. We wanted to look around and see what communities that were doing that were working and to build on those and promote them as existing or promising practice. We wanted to make sure that whatever solutions we came up with were simple, they were actionable, and easily replicated in community. And we wanted to promote social health. Now you might be saying, okay, social health, that's a new term for me. Social health is evolving as a key issue in describing total well-being. Next slide, please. Social health is the aspect of well-being that stems from connections and community. It's different from, but it's connected to mental health and social determinants. Next slide. So in essence, when we look at the full dimensions of well-being, physical health relates to the body, mental health relates to the mind, and social health relates to relationships and connections. Next slide, please. One of the first thing that we did was we developed a Reach Out MA campaign because we found that a lot of people really did not understand the benefits of staying connected or the risk of being lonely. So we developed Reach Out MA, where we employed mayors and town officials and others to do PSAs that were aired in their communities. We used social media and other ways to get out the message, reach out, encouraging base staters to reach out to their neighbors and loved ones, especially those they had not seen in a while or those that were living alone. And then also during COVID, we promoted through social media and community access television small, safe ways in which people can reach out to their neighbors. Next slide, please. What we've done also is we have September 28th of each year is National Good Neighbor Day. So on National Good Neighbor Day, we hold annual virtual summits. There we encourage everyone to create or to celebrate Good Neighbor Day, to renew their social contracts, to remember what it means to be a good neighbor, and to reach out to loved ones and neighbors, especially those who are living alone. In 2020, when we held our first summit, we had Lisa March Rison, who is the past president of the ARP Foundation. 2021, Risa Wilkinson, who is the executive director of Healthy Places by Design. And last year, 2022, we had Mark Freeman, who's the co-CEO or CEO of CoGenerate. There we also share promising practice that we picked up, our new findings, and really what the future directions the task force would be, and seek advice, have a lot of conversations and seek advice from the audience. Next slide, please. The next thing that we've done is we have created through community media channels, Mass Access, a monthly television series exploring themes related to loneliness, social connections, and healthy aging. And our main audience there is people who generally are not connected to social media, those who do not have network television, and especially people who are living in rural areas and not having connected. So we thought that there was an opportunity to make connections to those people as well. Next slide, please. And we're really excited about a very new project that we're starting and launching this summer. It's called Conversations MA, inspired by a similar project in New York City, a project that has been going on annually in Bryant Park. I think in June, we're hosting and asking communities, community leaders, neighborhood associations, and others who are just interested in coming together to connect, to meet their neighbors, to renew friendships, to talk to each other. So we, if you are interested in joining these conversations or hosting these conversations, it's just an opportunity for us to move out of our habitual loneliness and to come together, you know, informally, to talk to our neighbors, meet our neighbors, and just to share whatever's on our mind, no set topic, but just an opportunity to get us to talk to each other. And we feel very strongly that we need to really set the time and to do that. Next slide, please. And lastly, we've done a lot of things, and we've been in the community suggesting residents do things, but we do know that we really need to begin to address those systemic structures that lead to loneliness and social isolation. And as reported by the American Society of Aging, there's enough evidence to indicate that conditions can be redesigned to ensure that loneliness is not a default in old age. It is possible to design out loneliness through new approaches to our social infrastructures and social institutions that support connections. For example, let's look at another look at our outdoor and public spaces. We do have a lack of socially connected, culturally relevant outdoor public spaces that are safe and welcoming. And if we had more of those, perhaps residents, especially older residents who are living in community, would be interested in coming out in a safe environment and if doing nothing more than people watch. But we do feel that that's an opportunity to begin making connections in communities. Our housing stock has grown out of sync with our demographic changes. It's time for us to look at new housing options. You know, let's begin to look more at intergenerational housing. Let's really begin to promote ADUs, house sharing, but look at not just a single residence housing that we are known for. And lastly, we feel very strongly that transportation is an issue, especially as older adults give up their driver's license, we're no longer driving. So we need to advocate for new modes of transportations that allow people to safely and conveniently and at a low cost move from place to place. Next slide, please. So those are the things that we're doing in a nutshell. And one of the real issues for me, and I've said this to Antron, is that this was too short. I've got so much more information I'd like to share, but in the interest of time. So for more information, you can visit us at www.endlonelinessma.com or go to the ARP Foundation's account, connecttoeffect.org, or connecttoeffect.org, how to make new friends. Or if you're interested in joining this movement and joining this work and becoming an age-friendly Massachusetts volunteer working with us on this work, then you can visit us at aarp.org/MA. Next slide, please. Thank you so much. And if we have time, I'll be more than happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much, Sandra, for that wonderful description of the task force, what you all are doing in community, and really how people can get engaged with it. So I really look forward to hopefully some questions coming in. Just a reminder, Q&A is a great place to put your questions. And with that, we're actually going to turn it over to Jared.
Thanks, Antron. Sandra, just such a wonderful presentation, and it's so cool that there's so many different ways to connect people with society and fill that need. So really excited to talk about a different way to do it here. Excellent. Well, thank you all for the time. I'll try to keep this tight so we can get questions answered. But my name is Jared Bloomfield. As Antron mentioned, I am the National Field Director at Wish of a Lifetime. Wish of a Lifetime is a nonprofit organization that grants wishes to older adults all throughout the country. So we too work on social isolation and social connection and think about it through storytelling. So we're a storytelling organization. We've granted almost 2,500 wishes since we were founded in 2008. And we're really lucky that we came on board with AARP in 2020, which has provided us an opportunity to grant wishes on a much larger scale over the last couple of years. And so our hope is to educate you all on what we're doing and for you to be able to bring a cool and connecting resource similar to what Sandra was saying with some of her action items, to bring this cool resource into your communities and into your neighborhoods. So I'm going to talk about what we do and how you can get involved here in my very short time. But before we show a little video that really encapsulates some of the amazing connections and stories that we're able to share through our wishes, I wanted to just get into what wishes we do grant. So as I mentioned, we have granted almost 2,500 experience-based opportunities, wishes, and they range from as simple as a hot air balloon ride or going to your first baseball game to as complicated as sending a World War II veteran to Normandy who stormed the beaches, a Holocaust survivor who went to Israel for the first time, or one of my favorite wishes was we granted a wish for 3 women to reconnect. They were 110, 105, and 103. And they hadn't seen each other for 35 years. And we needed private planes to get them medically to where they needed to be. And so when we look at our wish experiences, there's 3 parts of a wish that need to happen in order for us to go ahead and grant that wish. And it is our goal that we grant hundreds of wishes per year. This is not Publishers Clearinghouse. We want to grant as many wishes that meet our criterion as possible. So we try to be really honest with what we look for. We look for older adults that have given a lot back in their life, which it's my personal belief, the more that you talk to older adults, the more you realize everybody has given a lot back, whether it's caring for family, caring for community, giving back professionally, giving back through volunteerism. That personal sacrifice is really a bedrock to what our older adults do and take pride in. The second piece is isolation, which is exactly what we're talking about today. We are hoping that through granting wishes, we are able to reduce or end social isolation. And so we're looking to grant wishes to older adults that are isolated, either socially, mentally, physically, or even financially. The third piece, and this is what we're going to highlight in this video, is a unique connection to the wish. We want to be able to grant wishes to older adults that something that they've really wanted to do for a long time. And I call it the Hawaii effect. We don't just grant nice wishes for nice people. We wouldn't just send Antron to Hawaii because we like him. We send older adults to Hawaii, for instance, who served in the military. We send older adults to baseball games that have wanted to go for 50 years. So there has to be that really deep connection. And before I get into a few examples of the types of wishes that we do, I wanted to share, it's about a 4-minute video, so I know it'll be most of my presentation time today, but I think it's worthwhile, and it shows the power of a potential wish being granted. So I hope you all sit back, relax, and really enjoy Mel Heckman's Wish of a Lifetime.
I didn't even know if he would be alive anymore, because I knew how much he really wanted to go. So we kept planning and we kept talking with him. And then when I found out, I never thought that he would ever be granted that wish again. Come on, he was already given it once and couldn't take it. The fact that he got it again was just phenomenal. So he was so ecstatic.
I nominated him back in 2013, and I'd known him at that point for a couple years, 3 years, and I knew that this was his wish. And we really tried to make it happen, but Mel fell ill and his wife fell ill. And so it didn't work out that year. But ever since then, and even before then, he's been talking about the 75th.
Nice to finally meet you, Mel.
Yeah, here we are.
You ready to go to Hawaii?
Yes, sir. Drive on there. That's just fine with me. You bet.
Navy Chief. Navy Pride. Navy Chief. Navy Pride. Navy Chief. Navy Pride. Booyah.
I'd like to share this honor with the shipmates. For instance, 1,177 men on the Arizona, the 460 souls on the Oklahoma, and many other of my shipmates.
Knowing that he's going to be able to come back with us, with all his family, to keep the story alive, and the truth of the story, the sacrifices of the men and women, that's vitally important to him.
Stand and join me in expressing our appreciation and grateful nation of watching you today.
Being in that exact location was so real, and I think so meaningful for him too. I saw his emotion, but I also saw his pride and his sense of being able to help others and accomplish what he needed to do as a sailor.
It was a beautiful Sunday morning. The 7th of December happened to be the day I was on duty with the fire station. The fire truck was parked right here, but the Japanese came in. It looked like the sky was black. There were so many of them. Unbelievable how many planes came in on Battleship Rolling here.
You were 18 years old. A lot of them were 18, 19.
That's it. Kids. Yeah. In the Arizona, 1,177 kids. Like my grandson standing right there. Exactly. That's a good example of what was on the Arizona.
You're in uniform here. Is Mel, your grandfather, is he part of the inspiration for you being in uniform?
Absolutely. I grew up listening to his stories and sitting at his dining room table, and his time in the service, the places he's seen, the things he's done, and it was my primary motivation for joining the Navy. I would not be here without him, and I would not be where I am without his mentorship.
And I want to thank her and the rescue folks at the bottom of my heart, because this is unbelievable.
I'm going to go to my next slide here. So I realize that I have about 4 minutes left in the presentation, and just wanted to take a step back and say, Mel's wish is so spectacular, but really it hits the isolation component, it hits the storytelling component, it also hits the connections component. You know, you see in the last slide, he went with his whole family, which is really amazing. With that being said, we can tell those stories in really profound and built out ways, or really simple everyday ways. And so I'm going to tell a few stories of some everyday wishes that we've done. We really sort them into 4 categories. And the first is commemorating service. So this is honoring older adults that served their communities, right? When you think about it, you think about military, you think about sending an older adult that's a Tuskegee Airman to receive an honor that he was due 75 years ago, or sending veterans to Washington, D.C. We're actually going in a couple weeks with 11 veterans. But we also sent police back to their fire stations, teachers back to their schools, social workers back to their hospitals, doctors back to their offices. This is about honoring people that have given back in their life and reminding them how important it was to their community. The second type of wish we grant is connecting loved ones. So there we are, that social connection. Exactly. During the pandemic, as Sandra mentioned, social connection was so important. We called all of our wish recipients and all the older adults we work with, and we asked them what they wanted. Do you want a coloring book? Do you want food? Do you want postcards? All they wanted was to see their family. And so for older adults that haven't seen family members, loved ones, friends, pen pals in 3 years or more, they are eligible for a wish under this category. And typically it's family, but we've even connected older adults with past partners, people that they dated when they were 17 or 18, and then in their 80s, they hadn't seen for 50 years and wanted to reconnect with, which is pretty darn cool. So renewing and celebrating passions is another category, honoring older adults that wish to do something that they used to love to do, whether it's going on a farm like Sue for the first time in 50 years. We trained 2 older adults to do the shot put at the National Senior Games. They were 89 and 91. One of them actually got the bronze. We've honored an older adult who was always a singer, who wanted to sing one last time. He was 97 and he sang in front of his entire community, 100 people on Christmas in 2017. So renewing and celebrating passions is us taking the barriers down of things that older adults have always wanted to do again after many years off. So if you take anything from this presentation and you talk to your friends about it, probably talk about, they'll probably bring up the bucket list, right? Oh, I've always wanted to do X, Y, and Z, right? And what you've seen is there's so much depth behind the wishes that we grant. There's a deep, deep story component. But for somebody that's 97 and has never, oh, look at me, my alarm said you need to be done talking. Great, we're 1 minute away here. So if you're 97 and you've always wanted to go on a fighter jet like Jack, we'd love to be able to grant that wish for you. If you're 103 and you're Luis and you want to throw out a first pitch of the baseball game, we're so honored to be able to grant that wish for you. We've had older adults skydive for the first time in their life at 92. We had a 99-year-old Holocaust survivor go on a hot air balloon because she felt like that was the last adventure she had not done in her life. So before I wrap up and we open it up to questions, we're really excited for you to take this information and bring it to your community to improve social connection. I have our application here. I know Antron's going to ask about next steps, and I'll put my information in the chat as well. But we're really, really excited for you to take this information and think about how can you use Wish of a Lifetime, a completely free resource supported by AARP to tell stories and also provide some joy in communities that really deeply need it. So with that being said, Sandra, thank you for starting us off. Just such a phenomenal presentation and representation of what ARP is doing to combat social isolation. And Antron and Kelly, thanks for having us on. Really, really pleased to be in this room.
Awesome. Thank you, Jared, so much for that wonderful explanation of what Wish of a Lifetime is and what they do. I found myself tearing up a little bit over Mel's story. So it's just wonderful how both of you really are talked about the barriers and removing those barriers that we have in our society and really are making pathways for individuals, organizations, all of us to really connect with our neighbors, people we interact with or don't interact with, and really find an opportunity for meaningful connections. So thank you both for that. We did have a couple questions that came in. Sandra, if you could answer this one, can you describe what intergenerational housing looks like briefly?
Well, we can start with a home. We know that because of financial or what's going on in the financial world, a lot of young people are moving back home, right? So therefore, you have more than one generation living on. Young people are moving in with their parents. I think we're finding, and research is showing us that when there is 3 generations in the home, that that is working very, very well, either in sharing one home or having an ADU behind it. And there are also what we're seeing, co-sharing, where, residents who have large homes and, for example, 2 and 3 bedrooms that they're not using, where they're inviting young people to join them, rent out spaces in their homes. And then my favorite, and what I'm looking for, is what I'm considering the Golden Girls on steroids, right? Where I retire with friends and live with friends, and homes that where we can kind of share not only duties and responsibilities and housekeeping, but also friendships.
Awesome. Thank you so much for answering that question. And Jared, one that did come in about really wish of a lifetime. Is there a wish that's too big, or is there wishes too big or too small that
Yeah.
can't be granted or fulfilled, I should say?
Great question. Yeah, we are supported by AARP and our funders to grant and tell amazing stories. There is no wish that is too big. As I mentioned, we've sent veterans to Normandy. We've sent Holocaust survivors to Israel. We've connected people with very high-level politicians. Some of the wishes are as simple as a few $100s. Some of the wishes are as complicated as international trips where visas need to come in handy. So super important. As long as the story's there, we're very proud that the sky really can be the limit.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that. So I think we've come to the end. You've done a lot. You got me speechless, and that's a rarity if people know me. But really, I want to thank you both again for being here today and sharing about, the work that you all are doing here in the community and, nationally. So with that, to learn more about both of these organizations, I did share the links earlier. We're going to try and share them again as well. But even to learn more about, in general, what AARP is doing in the livable community space, you can always visit aarp.org/livable to really learn about all of the wonderful resources we have and dive into some of these very specific issue areas, be it on housing, transportation, communications, parks and public spaces, and the general ways that you all as individuals or organizations can engage in this work and really lead to making great communities for people of all ages.